Hey everyone, Chat Sematary is back. I'm your host, Deanna Chapman, and today I am joined once again by Katie Schaefer, and we are talking about something a little different today. I discovered these Creepshow novels. Each one has 2 stories in it. Today we are talking Creepshow The Taker, which has the stories The Taker and Pretty Polly in them, and these are written by Ellie Cooper. But Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. These are very different than what we usually do, and I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, they're very much directed at kids. I mean, these books are scholastic books.
Yeah, they're tweens. This is about the age range I would say this is for.
Yeah, and you have kids, so I thought this might be an interesting thing for you to do, because I don't know if the kids read or if they just play video games.
One just plays video games and one does read.
Okay.
But the one who plays video games used to read all the time, constantly.
Okay, so you got reader children over there. I just saw Creepshow and went, why not? Because I'm caught up on Stephen King books, and, you know, they're like 200 pages.
Yeah, and they're very big print.
And each story is about 100 pages, and there's, you know, a couple pictures here and there for the, you know, titles. But let's start with The Taker, because I think the premise behind these stories is good, but
yes,
I kind of wanted something more out of The Taker, and we'll talk about that in a little bit because it's more so having to do with the end of the story. But you have this girl and her family moving into a new house. There is a ghostly presence in the house, but it's only in Bee's room.
And I think she's, 14, 15 in these?
Right. So she's starting school at a new high school. She tries out for the dance team, makes the dance team. Obviously, spoilers here. I guess I should do that. I never remembered to do this. These came out in 2021, I think.
Oh.
So they're fairly new. And I'm guessing a lot of this has to do with the revival of the TV show, Creepshow.
Yes.
Not that it was a TV show before, but you know what I mean. The one on Shudder is why these things exist.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I love that they're branching out because Creepshow started as a comic.
Yeah, and this totally fits into, and they feel not necessarily the stories from the Creepshow movies or even the TV show, but they feel like
This is the kids' version.
yeah, exactly. Like the less adult episodes of Tales from the Crypt or something like that, which
Yeah.
Creepshow is, you know, both inspired by and inspired those kinds of shows. So
As things go on, we find out that Bee's room is always colder than the rest of the house, which I thought that was funny because I am currently in a room that is colder than the rest of the house. Not currently as we record this, but my bedroom is colder than pretty much the rest of the house, with the exception of the basement, because that's a basement, so we're not really counting that. But as far as all of the rooms upstairs go, mine's the coldest.
oh goodness.
And the office is like the hottest. So I got both ends of the spectrum here.
But does it smell like grape bubble gum all the time?
No, thankfully it does not.
God, that would be nauseating.
I'd be a little worried if it starts smelling like that, though. So this ghost,
right.
Kimmy, used to live in the house. And I wish they would have dug into Kimmy's history a little more, too, because you see B going and finding out information about the family that lived there before, and, you know, like she killed her parents and all of this stuff. But it just felt a little shallow, and maybe that's because these are YA books, and I have nothing against YA books, but I've also read like quite a few Star Wars YA books that go very in depth on things, like the Princess Leia books, and I have read some of the sort of like Dark Legends is their kind of YA spooky storybook for Star Wars, which
okay.
you might enjoy that, but that's besides the point. This felt like a sort of watered down version of that a little. Like the Star Wars stuff really goes into the Star Wars lore. They'll mention Vader and certain characters, and this felt like they could have gone a little bit deeper, even though it is a YA book. And, you know, what did you think, though, of B as a character and her joining up with the dance team and just sort of who she becomes throughout this?
So I really, really disliked B as a character. I found her so annoying and predictable. It was grating on me. I was like, oh God, no, not one of these girls. Like how embarrassed, and not even just like she's a popular pretty girl or whatever. It's how embarrassed she is of her parents. That kind of thing where it's just this cliche and it's not played off very well. Made it hard for me to feel bad for her because it was like, well, you are being kind of terrible. So, and then the Kimmy character is a little too much without that substance. Like, I want to know more about her in order to justify her very over the top behavior.
Yeah, like stealing the mom's earrings off of her ears, and, hiding Bee's school books and stuff. It was just like, okay. And the twist at the end, this is the thing I really wanted to talk about. And, we don't have to go super long on these episodes because I don't know how many people are going to go pick these up. I think if you have kids and you kind of want to introduce them to horror stuff, these could be good for that, just because they're not so scary that you're going to like ruin a child's life with these. But
these are less scary than like scary stories to tell in the dark, for example. So if your kid can handle that, your kid can probably handle this.
Yeah, but the twist, it comes so late that I wish it would have come like 10 to 15 pages earlier, and then we sort of see Kimmy pretending to be a little more.
Right, the fallout from this, it just feels chopped off at the end. I agree.
Because it was like B is stuck in her bedroom now, and then she just watches Kimmy walk away as her with the dance team, and that was kind of where it ended. And I was like, no, I want more, which is funny to say because I didn't think the story was super fantastic. I thought they were fine, both of them, and the other book as well. I think that it just kind of had a little bit of lacking in the character development at the end, because we do see B change like as soon as she joins the dance team, and she's kind of hesitant to do the things the girls want her to do. So she's kind of likable in those moments. So like the first 10 pages. And then afterwards, you're just like, you are becoming everything you hate just to be on the dance team.
Right. Like, it can't be that amazing, ma'am. That's just to give up all of your, who you are. For that. Like, I mean, high school is a shit show, as most people know anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quick cutoff just makes it feel like it wasn't paced well, and there's a lot in there that's just kind of like a lot of the time they spend in the coffee shop and all that. I'm like, we're repeating this same plot point over and over again when we could have used that time to extend the story a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I get it, but I think it was not as good as it could have been. Whereas the second one was actually pretty decent. Like, the character is likable, flawed, but likable.
Yeah, I had fun with this one because this is something that felt like it could have been one of the actual episodes of Creepshow, because not all of the Creepshow episodes are super adult and gory and weird. You have ones that have kids in them, like you have Gray Matter, which, this kid's dad is being overtaken by all of this stuff, and it's disgusting, yes, but at the same time, this one with the parrot that he gets for free, you can tell that Casey loves animals in general, and it's the bird that is the problem. It's never Casey. Casey goes deeper than B does in the first story. She just finds sort of these newspaper clippings or, old articles, but Casey goes through the trouble of finding the previous owners of this bird.
Like 3 back, too.
Yeah, because he gets it from Mr. Byron. He calls Mr. Byron and asks him questions about the bird, or meets up with him at the library to ask him more questions and helps him take his library books back in, because he apparently checks out a lot of books all at once.
Yes.
Which I love.
Like, I can relate to this. I can relate.
Yeah, and then he contacts a woman who had the bird before Mr. Byron, and then he finds the granddaughter, I want to say, of like another owner, and that person is just like, I can't believe that bird's still alive. And that's when you're like,
still going.
Oh, something's going on here. And it was just so much more detailed, I think, than the first story. And I would recommend Pretty Polly over The Taker for sure if you just want something to read that isn't like super dense or anything. And the relationship between Casey and his mom, who is a single mom, and the dad sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Which is quintessential Creepshow, in my opinion, because there are a lot of dads that suck in Creepshow.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. And he very much does.
In all versions.
Yes. And I think this one goes a little bit harder than the other one does. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah.
You know, the bird claws his dad's eyes out, causes him to get in a car accident. Like, shit gets real.
This bird is possessed by something, that's for sure.
Yes. Yes. It's ancient. And I thought the ending on this one was much better. Like, it's able to wrap itself up in a much more satisfying way. And Casey, you just feel for him.
Yeah, and they don't even go super deep into Casey as a character either. What we know is things are tough with his mom and dad. He loves animals, and he now has a possessed bird. And it doesn't go into his school life really, or any other details that we typically like learning about kids. Like, this isn't it.
Yeah, no, we meet one of his friends, and that's the vision of his world that we get. It's very small.
And I think small works because, like I said, these stories are only about 100 pages in a YA book that has very large print. This isn't it with 1,100 pages in the tiniest print imaginable on my shelf.
It's a doorstop of a book. Yes, yes. It is Bible thin pages for sure.
I thought I was going to rip so many of those pages when I was reading that book because they were so thin. I was terrified. And because, just a side note here, because my mom did buy the mass market paperbacks when they first came out.
Oh God, they're in delicate condition.
Like, so many of them are taped up now.
Yes. Because
books aren't meant to last forever, not in the mass market paperback world anyway. It's not like these are 1900s hardcovers that have like nice thick pages to them. Right. These are like dainty little things.
Yes, where they're just like fall apart at the wrong wind sometimes, especially the bigger the book gets, the less well bound it is.
Yeah, and apparently someone had read some of them and they like creased the spines. I can tell which ones someone else read because my mom and I don't do that. So I'm like, okay, someone else read all of these copies here.
Yep. Oh, that crack is like, no, it's ruined.
Oh, you should see Needful Things because that one's a chunky book too, and all the cracks in it. Anyway, little side note there for all of you fans of the podcast. Hopefully you find that entertaining. But Pretty Polly, by far and away, was my favorite of these two stories. I think it just kind of hit everything that I didn't think the first story hit, which is funny because they're written by the same person. So I don't know.
All four of the stories in these two books are written by the same person.
Yes, because in the next episode, we will be talking about the other book called The Cursed, which you'll listen to next week, I guess. So, Katie, do you have anything else to say about The Taker or Pretty Polly or, just these little Creepshow books in general?
I think I'm really glad they're doing them. Like for a 12-year-old, I would say that's about the age that this is aimed at.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple years younger or older, depending on their reading level.
I think the age range on Amazon when I bought the books was like 8 to 12, maybe, or 8 and up, whatever it is.
Yes. For a precocious 8-year-old, they could definitely handle this. But I think I'm really glad they exist because they are a perfect way to dip your toes into a horror story without getting too overwhelmed. They have the creepy pictures in the front and the back and a couple of other ones throughout. Like it's a spooky story that like Goosebumps or something that I read when I was in that age range. And they're Creepshow, and which maybe will get them into watching, as they get a little older, the Creepshow movies and show and read the original comic. And so I think it's a good thing they exist, but they are a little inexplicable sometimes of like, okay, sure, let's do this.
Which, honestly, outside of Star Wars, I haven't read a ton of YA stuff just because I've been busy reading Stephen King stuff, as you know.
Right.
So it's like Stephen King and a bunch of like nonfiction business stuff was like what I've been reading for the last few years here. plus some other stuff in between when I could somehow find the time. But
Yeah.
I just love the Creepshow brand. So I'm glad that they're doing this, because I completely missed Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, a lot of those like late 80s, early 90s anthology things, The Outer Limits, you know.
Yes.
I was not around for a lot of those things, or I was very small for a lot of those things. So they just slipped by me. And I think it was something where it wasn't until I got into doing this podcast that I even really started diving into any anthology stuff, whether it was the Creepshow movies or Cat's Eye is another one that's fun.
Yep.
And you have, you know, I've been covering a bunch of the TV episodes of Stephen King stuff, like The Outer Limits and whatnot, over on Patreon. And I didn't even know about a lot of these things until that. And at one point I had started watching the original Twilight Zone, which is basically, you know, the same kind of thing. It's different stories every episode. I only got a few episodes in.
It's amazing. I watched it as a kid growing up.
I think anthology stuff is really fun because you don't have to tell this big, long, massive story. You know, with Twilight Zone, those episodes are what, 20 minutes? You're in and you're out. And it's a fun little sci-fi horror time. And I think anthologies have become very underrated, if you will. And I know they tried to do that with Castle Rock, for instance, but they were still telling an entire story with each season.
Right. These are just very self-contained, like just a little nibble.
And they did connect in the end for Castle Rock. So
Yes, for Castle Rock they did. I think it's a fun read if you're of that age range, or you like that kind of horror where you don't want to go full on horrific, but
yeah. But I think that's all I have for this one. Katie, anything? Any last minute thoughts?
I think I got it all out.
Yeah, so if you have kids, maybe pick these up. I think it was like $8 for the book. It wasn't anything drastically expensive. I don't know if these are things that they have at those little book fairs. I don't even know if they're doing book fairs anymore, but I know
They do.
we used
They
to get them
absolutely
at my school, and I went to private school, so you get the little Scholastic book fairs. Maybe they have these. I don't know.
I'll look, because one of my kids is still in elementary school, so she still gets the Scholastic Book Fair stuff. So I'll keep an eye out.
That would be a fun inclusion. I don't know how many parents would love that other than you. But
Hey, they have some crazy shit in those Scholastic catalogs, man.
that is fair. We'll end it on that note. Scholastic,
Yes.
you crazy.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.